Hi everybody, welcome to Center Stage. I'm Rajiv. Welcome to my show. Today I have Vittorio Viarengo, Vice President of Marketing, Cloud Business Unit for McAfee.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for taking the time. So you came aboard McAfee, which is started over 30 years ago, from the acquisition of Skyhigh.
Yep.
And you've been with the company for a little over a year and a half. And but your journey has been really interesting. You've only been in marketing, you were telling me, for about 7 to 8 years. Prior to that, you were in product marketing. Tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got here.
Yeah, so I started as a founder in Italy. I founded a small technology company, a software company. Then I sold it to an American company, and most of my career was in product management and engineering management.
Okay.
And then in 2011, 2012, when I was at VMware, I started to take a more active role in product marketing. Mm-hmm. And then eventually I became the CMO of Mobile Iron and then Skyhigh. So I went to the dark side.
Okay. Not so dark. I don't think it's that as dark as some other areas. But so tell us about your current role as Vice President of Business Cloud Unit at McAfee.
So myself and my team are responsible for the thought leadership and the funnel generation for Envision Cloud, which is the fastest growing product at McAfee right now.
Okay. And why is that the case? I mean, cloud has been around for a while. Why is it trending so fast?
So when McAfee acquired Skyhigh was the creator of a new category called Cloud Access Security Broker. So the founders of the company saw that the world was going cloud first. Mm-hmm. And as the world was going cloud first and using the cloud as a innovation platform, enterprise data was going to be increasingly in the cloud. Mm-hmm. And so the idea was somebody will have to go and see what the data is in the cloud. Mm-hmm. And provide the proper control so that enterprises can adopt the cloud with the peace of mind that the data is secure.
And when you talk about Envision, you also have been talking about sort of the new rules of cloud security. Tell us a little bit about what that means.
So if you think about the evolution of the architecture for IT, it used to be everything was on-prem. So we hugged our servers, we hugged our data, we lock it. The bad guys were out, the good guys were in. Yep. And then we had the internet, so we started to have to figure out how to get outside of the enterprise and mm-hmm. secure that path. Mm-hmm. But the network was still the center of gravity.
Sure.
But now, most of the applications are in the cloud. Your data is in the cloud. Mm-hmm. And so when you are, for example, creating a document in Office 365,
sure.
that is completely invisible to the network. Mm-hmm. So if you're securing the network, your data and your action happens over here, nobody sees it, you cannot secure it. Mm-hmm. And then if you take that document, you share it on Box or Dropbox, mm-hmm. all that work happens on services you don't own mm-hmm. through networks you don't operate.
AWS,
so you need
Google Cloud. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So you need a new approach to security, which is basically having a native approach where you go and use APIs, cloud APIs, mm-hmm. to see where your data is, mm-hmm. and then provide the proper control so that only the people that are supposed to get access to that data
have access to it. Got it. So what does your typical day look like for you at McAfee?
So first thing I do when I get to the office, I grab a colleague and I have my espresso.
Okay.
I'm Italian. So
Good way to start the day.
I'm not just speaking the accent. Uh-huh. And after that, you catch up on email. And usually, so I run marketing using Scrum. Mm-hmm. I take that from my engineering background.
Sure.
And so I look at my Scrum backlog and see.
You do a daily stand-up?
We do the daily stand-up. We do the sprints of 2 weeks.
Okay.
So I look at my priorities. I look at what I owe to the team. You know, mm-hmm. what I need to do for them, and whether it's shooting a video or writing a presentation, and then I take it from there.
Removing blockers, reprioritizing as you need to.
Absolutely. Yep.
And what's your team structure look like?
So we have, within the cloud business unit, we have almost all the function of a marketing organization. Mm-hmm. So when McAfee acquired Skyhigh, they tried to keep that intact, mm-hmm. to keep the momentum. And so we have events, we have thought leadership and product marketing, mm-hmm. And then content production. Okay. So because my philosophy is that I want to be able, when I have an idea, or an executive had an idea, I want the barrier for that idea to go from somebody's brain to being on YouTube or to be on a website to be zero.
Remove the barriers.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So if we have an idea for a video or something, we can literally have the idea, write a little script or just wing it, go to the video studio, record it, and within a few hours it's on YouTube.
That's great. That's actually somewhat unheard of in terms of that approach when it comes to bigger companies. There's actually usually many barriers, many different sort of decision makers and stakeholders. It takes a little bit longer to implement when you're at a larger company as opposed to a startup where you're implementing lean startup principles and you sort of ship, iterate, measure, do it over and over, which it sounds like an approach you're taking that's been successful for you.
Ship and learn.
Ship and learn.
Well, it's inevitable as you grow bigger that you have to, become more structured and have more people in charge of. But at some point,
processes.
it almost like you become a manager of vendors. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I like to keep that the speed and agility in everything we do.
Mm-hmm.
So we try to do as much as possible in house.
Yeah. So let's talk about managing vendors. Before we got on camera, we were talking about how you sort of thrive off of being in the state of a zone of uncomfortable or not knowing, and why that's important. Tell us a little bit why that's important to you. Why does that matter?
I am absolutely addicted to that process.
Addicted to that process.
Yeah, I'm addicted to not knowing something
Uh-huh.
and then putting the hard work that is required to learn how to do something, because there's nothing more exhilarating or rewarding than getting to the other side of that dip and learning how to do something. And so every time I have an opportunity to put myself outside of my comfort zone,
Mm-hmm.
I dive into it.
What advice can you give, budding entrepreneurs and marketers that are not okay being in that sort of state of not knowing or ambiguity? Because a lot of people that I know are not. They like the routine, they like the known. When you step out of your comfort zone, it does challenge you to a different state, but sometimes it can be uncomfortable where people don't want to go there. So how do you do that?
So first of all, we are who we are, and
Yeah.
some people just like their routine, and that's okay because there are jobs where they require that. For the people that do it, but they're not comfortable with being uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
what I would recommend just do it. Just do it, because the more you do it, the more you fail, and then you learn,
Right.
and the more you get used to it.
Sure.
And after a while, it becomes a habit.
Yes.
And what they said, there's a great booklet from Seth Godin
Mm-hmm.
called The Dip,
Mm-hmm.
which is it's just like 50 pages. I highly recommend it.
Okay.
It talks about the dip. Anything interesting in life, anything in life that is worthwhile, comes with a dip. Right? And so, if the right place it's okay to quit, but you don't want to quit in the dip. You either quit before you start something. You look at that dip. You look at the other side. Say, that's not worth it.
Okay.
Or you quit when you're done, right?
Mhm.
But never ever quit in the dip.
When you're in it.
Yeah, because that's where you learn, and then if you quit there, then you feel bad about yourself, right?
Right.
So just push yourself through that, and like all the great leaders or athletes, they always say, "I failed so many times." People remember, and startups, Silicon Valley, right?
100%.
1 in 10 makes it, right?
Right,
And
right.
we only talk about the success. Well, the success
Yeah.
comes because people have failed multiple times, and
Right.
then they find a formula for success.
Right, and I think the takeaway there is, it's okay to fail, but don't repeat those failures.
Oh, yeah.
Learn from your mistakes and improve upon that. And it's okay to get out of your comfort zone, because that's when you can actually thrive and really challenge yourself to excel at new learnings. You actually talked in a recent interview, sort of related to this, about how you can't really change people and how they need to use their strengths and not try to fix them. Tell me a little bit more about that point of view.
Well, you can try to change people. You're going to fail miserably and make them miserable and make yourself miserable in the process. So I think part of running a team or having a leadership position is to spend the time to really understand what are people's strengths.
Mm-hmm.
And then put them in positions where they can exercise those strengths every day. Because one, they're going to be more productive and better for them, better for the company. And two, they're going to be happier. And happier people, guess what? They're going to make their customers happier, which at the end of the day, that's what we want to achieve.
Got it. You also have spoken a lot about the importance of delivering killer or great presentations. Tell me a little bit about your point of view on that. I mean, obviously it's important. Your audience, you want them to be engaged, but what's the secret sauce there?
I think telling a good story is much more important than people realize, because telling stories is fundamental to the evolution of humankind.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we pass on knowledge to the next generation. And also, that's by telling bigger stories, that's how we manage to organize beyond 1,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing in nature that organizes beyond 10, 15 people, 15 units, like chimpanzees or pick your species.
Right.
But humans have managed to organize beyond 1,000 by telling stories. And so to me, I see it's a pet peeve of mine that every time I look at people creating a presentation. They think about that, I'm going to create slides. No, you're not creating slides. Think about the story you want to tell,
Sure.
and then put together the visuals that help you tell the stories.
Right.
And this day, you look at professional with like font, besides the basic, like font 5 on a screen, stuff like that. Every slide that you look at in the slide presentation, it's a completely different concept. And slide 1, slide 2, slide 3, there are different things. So I always like to create slides that build on each other, so that you build the mental pictures in the audience,
Sure.
and that stories then will stick.
Holistic sort of
visible.
story arc that
Yeah.
comes across in the presentation. Yeah, so speaking of storytelling, I think one of the responsibilities of a marketer is to be able to craft and tell a great story, to simplify that messaging. So what's your approach in terms of telling that story at McAfee when it comes to Envision and the cloud to the enterprises that you're selling to?
It's really hard to market security because traditionally you just scare people into buying it, right? If you don't buy this security product, you're going to get fired, you're going to get breached, and
Sure.
something bad is going to happen, which is true. But in the cloud, the reason why people adopt the cloud is business agility. In a recent survey that we did, we found that people adopting the cloud, that 8 out of 10 benefits that are experiencing are about business. The ability to go into new markets faster, develop product faster, make their employees more productive. And so to me, a better way to market a cloud security product is to tie to those benefits and say, hey, if you have the confidence that you know where your data is and your data is secure, you can adopt the cloud faster, which in turn allows you to accelerate the business in the cloud.
So security is an underlying theme, which we know is important, but really the value proposition is becoming more agile for your business by moving to the cloud.
Yeah, and I don't know how you this day and age how you become agile without going through the cloud.
Sure. So, I mean, the industry is continuing to evolve at a rapid pace. How do you sort of stay up to date in terms of what's happening and the changes that you see in the industry?
Besides the usual things, you read the news and you follow Twitters and try not to get dragged into some trolling exercise. In Silicon Valley, we don't have any problem finding smart people. So
Sure.
I try to hang out with smart people, and typically the people that know where things are going are the engineers. And so I try to spend as much time with the engineering team or the founders of the company, and that's how I stay fresh. Because if you want to be taken seriously as a marketing professional, I think you need to be to understand the technology and the challenges in bringing technology to market. So then you have a seat at the table and you're taken seriously and you're more effective in your
Makes
job.
sense. And speaking of founders and being a founder yourself, what advice would you give startups or founders that are just entering the market?
It is not easy, especially in security. There's thousands of companies. It's so fragmented. There's so much noise. And so what I would say, two things. One, something I learned recently by following Richard Branson, is that usually you say, put your customers first.
Okay.
And Richard says, no, put the employees first. Because happy, engaged employees will make it
Happy customers.
Happy customers. And so that's one. And the second thing is always either find something that's been done before and you can do it in a completely different way and go and stick with it and do it, or create something, a new category, which is hard, but that's what Skyhigh did. Right? Skyhigh created a new category, which is really hard initially, but then once you establish yourself as a leader in a category, now you're a leader, so people know about you.
Yeah.
That doesn't make it easy going forward because you always have to move the post in terms of thought leadership and what's next. But once you are established, then it's a little easy.
Are there any future trends that you've seen that you're really excited about?
To me, the most exciting things right now is DevOps. And
DevOps. Okay.
in every transformation of IT for the last 30 years, the developers have always driven that.
Okay.
And to me, with DevOps and the cloud, for the first time in the history of IT, the developers really are in charge of everything. Before, they had to build an application, give it to somebody that would deploy it, and then the security team would have to sign off. And by the time they deployed this application, the market has shifted, and you're obsolete.
Too much time, yeah.
And now, by bringing everything to the developers' hands, they can just pretty much rule the world. And I truly believe that software engineers make the world go round, and the more friction we remove from their workflow, and the faster we're going to go as an industry and as companies.
Got it. And you just mentioned, happy employees really matters when it comes to, having happy customers. So what is the culture like at McAfee? How has that resonated with you after being at Skyhigh and now moving over to McAfee?
So McAfee, I think, has an easier job than most companies in motivating people because people are motivated by the why, by the mission. And our mission is to protect individuals, governments, and enterprises from cybercrime and cybersecurity. And so I think that's very compelling and very inspiring. The challenge, I think, for us leaders in the company is, how you map that to what people do day in and day out.
Sure.
And so if you do that, if you make that connection properly, then I think it's you create a very inspiring and cohesive culture for the company.
And so how do you make that connection? How do you do that?
Well, there are two things. One, you have to connect it to what people do day in, day out. So if, say, that we are protecting people from cybercrime, okay, so what does Skyhigh do? Well, we do it in the cloud. So we protect your data in the cloud so you can accelerate your business. But then you also have to cater to the individual aspiration, right? And their career aspiration, what they want to learn and all that. And when you have these three factor together, then you're really humming.
Got it. Awesome. So let's shift gears for a little bit and talk about some different topics. One of them that's really interesting to me is that you also are a foodie, a food blogger.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about that. You have over 200 recipes that you share online, and where did that passion come from?
So I grew up as a baker.
Okay.
So I put my 10,000 hours to become a professional baker when I was young.
Wow.
And I was in 2009. I was sick of people asking me, "How do you make focaccia bread? How do you make focaccia bread?" So I shot a video.
I don't know how to make focaccia bread. Can
you
you show me? I like to eat it though.
So now I put that video online, and that video and the subsequent version of it has 2.5 million views now.
You're kidding.
And so it started to go viral, and I put it on WordPress, and then it became that. As I started to see this growing, and I started to learn how social media would work, and by now we have, now my daughter actually runs my social media channel. We have 560,000 fans on Facebook.
Wow.
This is serious.
And it's all in Italian though.
Yeah, it's all in Italian. I have an English version, but it's not as developed. And so that took off, and I think the key was using video early, 2009, and two, answer every question that anybody asks all the time.
So how do you have time or bandwidth to do that?
Well,
with a full-time job as well?
I make time for things that I love. So I would come home and then just go online and do it. But now I have my brother-in-law in Italy is helping me with that, and my daughter.
That's awesome.
To do it. But that's the key. I mean, it's like any blog, to be successful, you have to be focused on something specific. Like in my case, is baking at home.
Yeah.
Two, you have to answer every question. Just pamper that community. It's not just one-way street. They have to get content out there, get the feedback and the questions, answer the question, and then it takes.
Speaking of Italian food, are there any restaurants in the Bay Area, Northern Italian or Southern Italian restaurant that you really gravitate to?
I'm actually not an expert because my wife and I have been together for 35 years, and she's a stay-at-home mom, and she's a great cook, so she makes every dinner, every breakfast, and every lunch that we have.
Wow.
But when we go out, I go to Donato Enoteca in Redwood City. I know the chef there, and it's a great restaurant, great wine selection, so that's what I would recommend.
Nice. And this is kind of a segment. I think I know the answer to this, but I'm just curious. I mean, how do you sort of strive for work-life balance? Because you're grinding every day, high-level job, and so do you believe that's possible? And if so, how?
You have to work at it, and I think Silicon Valley is coming around to it because we are realizing that people that are not balanced are not creative and they're not productive. So you can probably work 80 hours a week when you're in your 20s, but then you burn out. And I actually had an employee once that he was working day and night, but the output was not there. So I sat down with him and said, you have to take a week off. You need to relax. And he looked at me and said, what am I going to do next week? I said, well, that's the problem. That's your problem.
Right.
So I don't have that problem because I have a lot of hobby. I have my food blog, I have my family, I have my sports and my music. So that's not a problem for me. But I find myself on a Friday afternoon being tired, and then I go home, I play my tennis, I disconnect, and then I come in the morning, on Monday morning. Yeah, and that thing that looked like a big problem on Friday, all of a sudden,
and there you go. Yeah, and that's actually related to something that I've been obsessed with, which is how do you get in a state of flow, right? And what that means is, so if you can get in that state, achieve that state where sort of time dissipates and you're fully focused, you can actually be 5x more productive, which is a massive leap in productivity. And so to your point about your employee that's working all the time, that may be the case, but if they're not actually being productive, then it's all for naught. So I think if you can try to achieve that state, and there's a bunch of different tactics to get there, that can really be helpful.
Yeah, I agree.
So, I mean, that's pretty much all the questions I have. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us before we leave?
No, we said a lot. It was very fun interview, and really appreciate you having me.
Thank you so much for your time, Vittorio. Thanks to everybody for watching. This is Center Stage with Rajiv, live from Palo Alto. Vittorio Viarengo, VP Business Cloud Unit for McAfee. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Bye, everybody. Take care.